Turn down the lights and listen closely. Tonight's stories aren't legends. They aren't folklore. They didn't crawl from the pages of a novel. They were lived. Every whisper you're about to hear was once someone's reality. Every shadow, every footstep in the dark, every breath felt on the back of a neck was real. So if you're alone right now, you might want to stay very still. Because sometimes, when we retell true scary stories, something listens. Welcome back to Black Rose Readings. Let's step into the dark. I was 10 years old when my mom found God, or maybe when God found her. It started with a small church tucked off a back road in rural Alabama. The kind of church you don't see unless you're looking for it. A gravel parking lot, a wooden cross that leaned just slightly to the left like it was tired of standing. We were a single mom family, 4 kids. My older sister was 12 and ready to believe everything. My little brother was 8 and followed me everywhere. My baby sister was 2 and mostly just cried when the singing got loud. And the singing was always loud. The church was small, maybe 30 people on a good Sunday. Everyone knew everyone. That's where I met George. George lived in the old house right next to the church's baptism pool. The pool wasn't fancy. It was built behind the church in a fenced-in patch of red Alabama dirt. George's house sat close enough that if you stood at the water's edge, you could see into his back porch through the screen door. When I turned 11, I decided to get baptized. Or rather, my mom decided I should get baptized. I didn't fully understand what it meant, but when you're raised in a room full of people speaking in tongues and crying at the altar, you learn early that you don't question things. You step forward when they tell you to. The day of my baptism was hot, the kind of Alabama heat that makes the air thick in your lungs. I remember running behind George's house before the ceremony started, just burning off nervous energy. I was barefoot, which is normal when you grow up there. And then I felt it, a sharp electric stab in my arm. I looked down and I saw it, sitting in a hedge brush I'd just run into. A snake. I remember screaming. I remember the adults rushing. I remember someone saying it didn't look like a venomous one, that I'd probably be fine. I remember the preacher asking if I still wanted to go through the baptism. I did. Looking back, I don't know why. Maybe pride, maybe fear of looking weak. Maybe I thought that if I got in that water, whatever had bitten me wouldn't matter anymore. So I limped into that pool beside George's house, arm throbbing, and the preacher held my nose and pushed me under. When I came back up, everyone clapped, and George was standing at his back window watching. A few years passed. George didn't change much. Still thin, still quiet, still watching. One afternoon, my little brother and I were at Margaret's house. Margaret was one of the sweetest women in the church. White hair, soft voice, always smelled like biscuits and laundry detergent. Her kitchen was the kind with the floor wallpaper and a table that had seen 40 years of elbows and prayer. We were eating lunch, bologna sandwiches and chips, when the phone rang. Margaret answered, and I watched her face change. She had covered her mouth, her chair scraped the floor as she stood up. George had taken his own life. I didn't understand it fully then. I just knew it felt heavy, like something in the room shifted. The man who lived beside the baptism pool, the man who watched from the window, gone. The church talked about it for weeks. Prayers, confusion, whispers about demons and darkness and spiritual warfare. That's when things started feeling different. The camping trip was supposed to bring everyone closer together. We rented 2 cabins out in the woods, one for the boys, one for the girls. It wasn't some big state park, just trees, dirt paths, and silence that got louder at night. By then, I was old enough to feel tension when adults thought we couldn't. Margaret pulled the preacher aside on the second day. I didn't hear the full conversation, but I heard enough. Her granddaughter, Haley, had been acting strange. Writing red X's on people's bedroom doors back home, talking to herself, laughing when no one else was. That night, the adults gathered in the boys' cabin living room. They sent me and all the other kids into one of the bedrooms. They stood in a circle around Haley, and they performed what they called an exorcism. I remember her screaming, not crying, screaming. I remember the preacher shouting scripture. I remember some of the older kids in the room crying and praying. I remember Margaret sobbing. And I remember being frozen. It was happening in the same room I was going to sleep in. The last full night of the trip. That night, it was just three of us in the boys' cabin. Me, the preacher, and his son, younger than me, probably 8. I was sleeping on one of those pull-out couch beds in the living room. The same room where Haley had been pinned down hours earlier while adults shouted about demons. The lights were off. The woods were silent. I fell asleep eventually, and then I woke up. No reason, just awake. The first thing I felt was wrongness. That feeling you get when your brain wakes up before your body does, when your instincts tell you something isn't right. I didn't move at first, then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, measured, on the cabin floor. Not coming from the hallway, not from outside, from inside the room. My heart started pounding so hard I thought whoever or whatever was there could hear it. The steps got closer. Then I felt it. The mattress dipped right beside me, like someone had just sat down or laid down. The weight was real. I felt the springs shift under my back. I felt the air move. I could hear breathing, faint, but there. I grabbed my blanket with both hands and pulled it tight around my face. I didn't pray. I didn't scream. I froze. Then the blanket was ripped off me. Not tugged, ripped. Like someone yanked it with force. Cold air hit my skin. I shot up so fast I don't remember my feet touching the ground. I ran straight into the preacher's bedroom and slammed the door open. He woke up confused, but when he saw my face, he didn't ask any more questions. I crawled into bed beside him. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but I was a kid, and something had just been in that room with me. The rest of the night passed without another sound. In the morning, the cabin looked normal. Blanket on the floor, no footsteps, no explanation. The preacher's son swore he never left his room, and I believed him. A few months later, my mom stopped going to church. No big dramatic exit, just stopped. And when she stopped, we stopped. No more singing, no more shouting, no more George's house beside the baptism pool, no more Margaret's kitchen, no more Haley. I never stopped thinking about that night, about the mattress dipping, about the breathing, about the blanket being ripped away. Was it a nightmare? Sleep paralysis? My mind replaying the exorcism hours later? Maybe. I remember the weight. I remember the cold. And sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, even now, I still wait a few seconds before I move, just to make sure the mattress doesn't dip beside me again. And sometimes in the dark, I still feel like something is watching, just like George used to, from a window I can't see. I've been working the overnight shift at a small gas station just off the highway for about 8 months. It's not a busy place after midnight. Most of the customers are truck drivers, the occasional rideshare driver, or someone grabbing cigarettes before heading home. After 2 a.m., it usually gets dead quiet. The hum of the refrigerators gets louder, the fluorescent lights feel harsher, and every sound seems bigger than it should be. I got used to that silence, though. What I didn't get used to was the night he showed up. It was a Wednesday around 2:10 a.m. when a dark sedan pulled into Pump 3. I noticed it immediately because I hadn't seen a car in nearly 40 minutes. The vehicle stopped, but no one got out. The engine stayed running. I waited for the driver to step out and start pumping gas, but nothing happened. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The car just sat there with its headlights on, aimed directly at the store windows. Eventually the lights switched off, but the engine was still running. That's when I started feeling uneasy. After almost 20 minutes, the driver finally stepped out. He was an average-looking guy, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. Nothing obviously strange about him, except he didn't reach for the pump. He didn't even look at it. He just stood beside his car, staring straight at the store. At me. I tried to act normal, pretending to organize the counter, but I could feel his eyes locked on the building. After about a minute, he walked inside. He didn't browse, didn't grab a drink, didn't check his phone. He walked straight up to the counter and stood there silently. I gave him a casual, "Hey, how's it going?" He didn't answer. He just looked at me, expression completely blank. After a few seconds, he asked, "What time do you get off?" That question hit me wrong. Customers sometimes make small talk, but this didn't feel like that. I told him 6 a.m., even though my shift ends at 5. He nodded slowly, like he was storing that information. Then he glanced around and asked, "You here by yourself?" I lied and said my coworker was in the back doing inventory. He didn't buy anything. He didn't say goodbye. He just stood around and walked out. But he didn't leave. He got back into his car and stayed parked at the pump. The engine was still running. 15 minutes passed, then 30. I kept checking the security monitor, hoping to see brake lights and watch him drive off. Instead, at around 3 a.m., he moved the car not toward the exit, but into a parking spot directly in front of the store entrance. Then he turned the engine off. That's when I locked the door. We're not really supposed to lock it during overnight hours unless there's a serious reason, but something in my gut told me this was one. A few minutes later, he stepped out again and walked to the entrance. He pulled the handle, it didn't open. He looked up at me through the glass and smiled. It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't friendly, it was calm, like he expected the door to be locked. He tried the handle again, slower this time, and then leaned slightly to the side, trying to see further inside the store. I picked up the phone and pretended to be in the middle of a call. He watched me for a few long seconds, then walked back to his car. I thought that would be the end of it, but he didn't drive away. He sat there, completely still. The parking lot was empty except for his car. The highway in the distance was quiet. It felt like the entire world had shrunk down to just me and him. I finally called the non-emergency police line and explained that a man had been lingering outside for nearly an hour and had asked what time I got off work. While I was on the phone, I saw his brake lights flick on. My heart jumped, thinking he was finally leaving. Instead, he pulled forward and parked along the side of the building out of view of the main windows. That's when I really panicked. There's a blind spot along the side of the wall where the dumpsters are. The security camera covers most of it, but not the very edge near the back door. I kept staring at the monitor, terrified I'd see him walk past the camera toward the employee entrance. Minutes felt like hours. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. Then I saw movement on the screen. He stepped into the frame from the side of the building, walking slowly toward the front again. He didn't try the door this time. He just stood there, looking in, waiting. After what felt like forever, police lights flashed across the parking lot. The moment he saw them, he got back in his car and drove off before the officers even pulled in. They took my statement, checked the era, and reviewed the footage. There wasn't much they could do, since he hadn't technically broken in or threatened me. They advised me to call immediately if he came back. He didn't even return the next night, or the one after that. But about 2 weeks later, I was checking the cameras during another quiet shift when I felt my stomach drop. A dark sedan slowly drove past the station without turning in. It didn't stop, it didn't slow down much, but as it passed under the streetlight, I saw the driver's face clearly for just a second. It was him. He didn't look at the pumps, he didn't look at the road, he was looking directly at the store windows. And even though he kept driving that night, I hadn't worked a single shift since without wondering if one night he's going to come back and this time not leave at all. I was 20 years old when this happened in 2023. I live in a quiet suburb in Southern California. It was a rainy night, sometime around 9 p.m. My family had just finished dinner and everyone went to their rooms. My parents' room is toward the back of the house, facing the backyard, and my room faces the street. I have a large window right next to my bed, and that night I had it slightly open because I like the cool air when it rains. My 2 dogs were on my bed with me. I was sitting at my desk scrolling on Pinterest, trying to decide on what I wanted to paint. That's when I heard it. Clear as day, I heard my mom's voice from outside my window say, "Bean, Bean." Bean is my dog's name. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I just assumed maybe my mom stepped outside for some reason, but then I paused. Our front door is old and heavy and loud. You can hear it open from anywhere in the house. I never heard it open. I froze and listened again. Bean, Bean. It sounded exactly like her. Same tone, same cadence, not yelling, just casually calling him. My dog immediately reacted. He lifted his head and stared toward the window. His ears were perked up. He wasn't barking, just intensely focused. I felt this slow, sick feeling in my stomach. I called my mom. She answered from her room and said, "No, mija, I'm in here with your stepdad." I asked if she went outside. She said no. While I was still on the phone with her, I heard it again. Bean, Beanie Weenie. That stopped my heart. Beanie Weenie was his nickname, and this time, it didn't sound exactly like my mom. It sounded like my sister. My mom and my sister have similar voices, but slightly different tones. And somehow, whatever was outside sounded like both of them at different moments. My sister was at work that night. I checked her location. She was in the next town over. She didn't get off until 11. I slowly walked to my window and looked outside. There's a street light directly across from my house, so even though it was raining, the front yard was dimly lit. There was no one there. No car, no silhouette, no movement. Just rain hitting the pavement. Behind me, my dog was still staring at the window, and it kept repeating his name over and over. Calm, patient, like it was trying to get him to come outside. At that point, I was panicking. My stepdad went outside and jokingly yelled, "Who's out there scaring my daughter and calling my dog?" There was no response. No footsteps, nothing running away. Just rain. I shut and locked my window immediately. I ended up calling my boyfriend at the time because I was shaking so badly. Even he, and he scares easily, didn't know what to say. Nothing else happened at night, but I still think about the way it switched voices and the way my dog knew it was there. And that's where tonight's stories fade into the dark. If you felt the chill, if your heart raced even more, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more haunting tales. Join our little circle of shadows, and I'll see you in the next story.